Good morning, folks. If we've not met, I'm Scott. I'm the lead pastor of the Foundry. I love music. Repping the Frogtown Hollow Jubilee Jug Band this morning. If you know, you know. Cover songs are kind of things that if you don't know what a cover song is, it's like when another band or artist plays a song that someone else has kind of made popular. For my money, one of the best cover songs I think you'll ever hear is Johnny Cash's "Hurt." You know it's a good song when the original artist goes, yeah, that's not my song anymore. Which is interesting because if you know the lyrics to the song "Hurt" by Trent Reznor and 9 Inch Nails, it was like this deeply personal anthem about a person in the throes of addiction and like the impact it was having on other people. But it became about a person in his 70s reconciling and thinking about a life well lived as he considered retirement and his legacy. Johnny Cash, that is, right? And what made that pop was the music video, which if you're Gen Alpha, was a thing that used to be how people talked about their songs or represented their songs, right? So the song for the music video, the song and music video coalesce and like really make this like a poignant thing. Because what you've got is actually the House of Cash Museum, which had been derelict and decrepit from like the mid-90s, and a Johnny Cash and his wife, who are going to both be dead within that year, sitting at the table, like having a caviar lobster dinner around smashed golden records, like dust and dirt and broken things, as he's saying and reflecting on a legacy of what has my life come to? What have I actually lived for in reference to the things that matter most? Now, the song that we just heard presented to us is a reflection in the other direction. It's a reflection rooted in the idea of like, now I can die happy. Now I feel fulfilled. We've been looking, if you're just with us for the very first time, at kind of the musical nature of the first 2 chapters of the book of Luke. What do I mean by that? They're kind of a musical in the sense that in between these narratives from a doctor and a historian named Luke, who is trying to help people understand, one guy in particular that's underwriting the project, this guy Theophilus, He's trying to help you make sense of the things you've heard about Jesus. So in between this narrative of like, this is how it went down and this is how your manger scene kind of goes, and if you got a nativity at home, right? Here are these songs that people experiencing these events like express. So week 1, we looked at Mary's song. And what it was like when she responded to God with this sense of being highly favored to do this task of bringing a child into the world, right? Then we looked at Zechariah's song and this idea of fulfilled promises on the Peace Sunday of Advent. And then last week, Josie gave us kind of the shortest song, which was notable because of who it was being sung to. This song of angels, which would be a thing that should fill stadiums, it should sell out Wembley, is going instead to the outskirts, to the margins, to the shepherds. And what are the ramifications of that as it relates to joy? And Simeon's song on the 4th Sunday of Advent helps us think about what it means to receive God's love and extend it. What does it mean to think about love from the lens of a life well lived? The details Luke gives us are not simple trivia, right? Like, this text happens after the birth of Jesus. So if you're coming Thursday, and I hope you will, Christmas Eve is Thursday, right? Yeah, right. Okay, December 24th, really hope to see you. We're going to work backwards, and we're going to look at Luke chapter 2, right? Don't come Thursday. We won't be here. If you look at Luke chapter, we're going to look at Luke chapter 2, 1 through 20 on December 24th. This text happens after the fact. So Jesus has been born. You know, we're out of Bethlehem, now we're back in Jerusalem, and Mary and Joseph are doing the thing that you're supposed to do with the firstborn. You're going to the temple, you're consecrating, you're doing an offering. This turtle dove thing isn't just some like cute detail. It's very important because it gives you a sense of the socioeconomic status of Mary and Joseph. Spoiler alert, they're not rich. And if you can't afford the big offering, the law of Moses says bring you some turtle doves, and this will work out just fine, right? So in that context, in the temple, here comes Simeon. He holds baby Jesus, pronounces this blessing, the song that we're going to look at for just a minute, and then like speaks some pretty crazy words over Mary too that we're going to look at. And what this whole story is kind of giving us a glimpse into is kind of the character and the nature of the love of God. And one of the things I would highlight to you about Simeon's song is that the story, Simeon's story in particular, really kind of gives us a sense of like the reality of life, which is that to tap into the love of God in a holiday season with all kinds of pressures and burdens for success, reconciliation, life well lived, we really are talking about what it means to attune ourselves, attune our story to the love of God. What do I mean by that? Well, Simeon's got two things going for him. Like, he's wrestled with, theologically, probably for a long season of his life, with the promises of the Hebrew Scriptures as it relates to the arrival of the Messiah. I don't know if this ever happens to you this time of year, where you read these prophecies out of Isaiah or Micah, and you go like, how do people not like connect these dots? Well, there's 400 years of silence in Israel's history between the last of those like hints at how the Messiah is going to come and the actual arrival that we're reading about here. Well, 400 years, you can fill the gaps with all kinds of other ways to kind of find life, right? Deal with cultural pressures of success. So one of the things Simeon has had to do is not kind of sell out in his life to the presenting pressures of a life well lived. The other thing he's got going for him is that God's Spirit is resting upon him, directing him to go to the temple that day. If you're looking for the Messiah in the first century and you're just kind of one in the crowd, right? The priests don't get it. The Pharisees don't mention it. The Sadducees don't mention it. The Essenes, the other political groups, don't mention it. Why is it that Simeon gets it? Well, God's Spirit is revealing something, just like last week that Josie was talking about. You're not looking for the Messiah in the couple that's bringing the turtle doves to the offering. You're looking for gold-plated stuff. You're looking for sales pitch. You're looking for war strength. If you're chasing a cultural picture of Messiah success in the first century, you're looking for the strength. You're looking for the might. You're looking at the palaces, not to the couple. But Simeon, right, is directing his eyes, directing his ears, directing his hands toward the love of God, that intersection between knowing the Scriptures and knowing what it's pointing to, and actually, on a personal level, aligning his life, being prompted by God, and letting that shape these pictures of success and a life well lived, right? Moved by the Spirit, he went to the temple courts. The parents brought the child, Jesus, to do for him what the custom of the law required. Simeon took the child into his arms and praised God. Okay, we're going to look at more of that in a minute. So when he says in verse 29, Sovereign Lord, as you have promised, you may now dismiss your servant in peace. Like, this is a thing he's been longing for, he sees fulfilled, right? He didn't get rich, to our knowledge. He didn't seem to have a huge following of people that he's like seemed to rally around him. He just knows, hey, this thing I've been longing for, this thing that you said was going to be like a role that I was going to get to experience, like that is for me a life well lived, right? To consider in our own spirit, right? When it comes to what it means to be loved and to love, how God's story for us maybe supersedes or doesn't the ways in which we're choosing to define success, I think is one of the things you could let Simeon's song encourage and challenge you in on the fourth Sunday of Advent. Said more succinctly, right? What lesser pictures of love, acclaim, success do you find yourself chasing that blocks your ability to be paying attention to the love of God where it actually shows up? Simeon's story, this verse 29 like idea of like, I can die happy now. Every now and then when like the Cubs win the World Series or something unlikely happens, you see these human interest stories about like a person that's waited all these years and dealt with all of these disappointments and like lives from that place of fulfillment. And that's what's going on here with Simeon. This idea that we can understand the love of God better. You know, Simeon's got this intersection between knowing the Old Testament promises and the story, but also knowing where the story is going, but also like relying and trusting God's Spirit to guide his day to day. Check out the words to the song. Sovereign Lord, as you've promised, you may now dismiss your servant in peace. The first line is very personal. My eyes have seen your salvation. So this isn't just like when we go to the chart and we look at Isaiah chapter 9, one could deduce. This is a personal touch of like, I see it, I behold it. It's my salvation, it's our salvation, it's your salvation. You've prepared that in sight of all nations. It's not just like a lot of first century pictures of the Messiah. We got a military conquering king that's gonna come stick it to the Roman Empire. And we're going, baby, let's go. No, instead, this is going to be in sight of all nations, a light for revelation to the Gentiles. Gentiles is a fancy first century way of saying people who are not ethnically Jewish. I'm a Gentile. You may be too. You know, the light, so it's a light, it's a pathway for those that have been outside of this story as it relates to the Hebrew Scriptures. And it's going to also be a glory for all of Israel. Right? So none of this anti-Semitism nonsense. Right? This is Israel. Israel is going to be elevated into storytellers, but this is a story that's available to all people. This is a thing that Simeon understands and has been thinking about, and is seeing Jesus there and beholding the baby, is able to go, yep, that's where we are. That's where we're going. And it's not just, this happens to me as a presenter of the Scriptures from time to time. And it may happen to you as you talk about your faith in other places, right? This is not an either or. This is not just like, sometimes when you're preaching and you're talking about your faith, you're like, yeah, this hope is true for you. But it doesn't always feel true for, your part of the story, the thing you're going through. Simeon's picture of love is like, man, this is accessible to the world. But it's not just something I'm talking about and intellectually sharing and making a really crafty TED Talk. It's something that as an older guy reflecting on his life goes, yep, this is the fulfillment of my story. Understanding how God's love has met our people after 400 years of silence, has breaking through and going forward, though I'm not going to be part of that story, is like moving us toward a just and generous expression of God's kingdom, right? Are you feeding that in your soul, right? Like this isn't just some spontaneous breakout into song. I think this is forged in private moments. One of the things we've looked at and just had some fun with over the course of 4 weeks and thinking about this song theme is like holiday music. Pandora, not the jewelry people, the music people who still exist. That's been like a 4-week joke. I didn't know Pandora still existed. It does. And they do studies now about music, and that's fun. They've been studying holiday music and just like the impact on people. Like week 1, we talked about whether you want to or not, you've heard 18 hours of All I Want for Christmas Is You this year. If you're just not trying, you're not a big Mariah fan, and you're just like floating through life, you've gotten about 18 hours of that in your psyche in the calendar year. One of the things, you can find it in the sermon notes if you go to the Connect page, is that one of the things they studied was how different songs evoke different moods. Now, practically, you know this, right? Like when you're raging, there's a certain song you might want to listen to. When you're sad, there's a certain song you want to listen to. When you're happy and jubilant and you got your best buddy in the car and we're going to turn it up to 11 and off we go, and we're going to sing along and driving becomes a secondary activity, be careful, right? Like like you got a song for that too. Well, that's true of Christmas songs too across generations. We talked last week about how, Dominic the Donkey, like, is a song that if you're of a certain generation, you're like charmed by comedy songs, but in other contexts, you'll stop shopping and you'll leave a store. You can look at this through the lens of like, okay, traditional little town of Bethlehem, depending on your generation. Pandora goes, yeah, for some of you, like that's like real soothing and sentimental and makes you think of the love of God. And then for others of you, you're like, ooh, I want to play the hits. Give me Mariah. What's my point? There is a point. The point here is we can look at Simeon's song and we can break it down in terms of its words and its meaning, but it's been forged in the private moments. This public declaration of the love of God has been forged in private moments of formation. Meaning this, for those of us who are in Christ, paying attention to the things, warring and competing for our affections, for our definitions of success, and then looking at, as we deal with those pressures, the things that we're doing that throw gasoline on that or direct it. In your life, are you just fueling outrage? Like does your soundtrack? This is not some treatise on like how religious music, But it's an interesting study Pandora did to say, hey, there's songs that we listen to that like make us angry at Christmas season. There's songs we listen to that like warm our hearts. And all I'm saying is, like, let's take that study and ask ourselves that same question. Are we fueling rage? Or are we directing it towards God's kingdom? Are we feeding joy in our story with gratitude? Or are we further isolating ourselves from a place of victimhood and self-pity? And I can't answer that question for you. It's one that you have to reflect on. It's one where you have to say, let the love of God meet us, work through us. But I would just offer to you that like this prompting of the Spirit, this attuning of the Spirit Simeon encounters is not just some well-crafted statement he's been workshopping at his house for a moment where it happens. It's forged like this intersection of the theology of the text, but also like, I can die happy now. Is like, I think, a reflection of a life well lived and well loved, right? And that doesn't just happen accidentally in our story. You won't stumble into that Simeon-esque life, because there's going to be lots of things that happen to you, right? And think about it as an old man going to the temple, believing that you're going to experience the Messiah someday. How many times you felt unfulfilled longing, disappointment, frustration, dejection. As you feel your body fail you, you begin to wonder, am I crazy? Maybe this is not going to happen after all. And to keep pushing through and letting the love of God stoke his story is something we have to point to as we look at and we celebrate the spirit of Simeon's ability to wait well, right? Like we often, like there's someone in our life that we're like, man, I don't know how they waded through that. I don't know how they dealt with that heavy thing. They had such faith. They had such joy. They had such confidence. This leads to the third point. Like the way in which that is forged is through vulnerability. Why this spontaneous, like, I can die happy now? It's because there's been a lot of private moments where he's come to grips with the reality that, like, he's getting along in years. God, are you going to do this thing? Imagine the vulnerability of feeling so confident, so prompted to go to the temple. You're not the priest. You don't have to. But to say, hey, today is the day I'm going to behold the Messiah. And the risk you're taking with every step closer you get there. And you walk in the room, and here's a couple with some turtle doves and a kid. Now, this is where it gets a little funny. because I don't know, I've been on both sides of this transaction. People tend to say weird things to new parents. Do they not? You probably got a list. I got a list. Thank you for your commentary on the size of my child's head. Not to mention the fact, Simeon walks in and I just get I was joking with Liz last week, who is a new mom, just for the dense dudes in the passage, sometimes you're like, hello, this woman just had a child. An older guy coming in and taking the baby and Simba style, pronouncing a blessing is sort of a mutually vulnerable position, is it not? And he doesn't make some pronouncement about the size of Jesus' head or, he sure does have the big feet or a pressed-in nose or whatever, whatever weird stuff you've heard said to someone. But he does say this. He turns to a woman who just had a child and be like, this son's going to cause the rising and falling of Israel. Thanks. Everything else, I don't know if you've paid attention to this. Every other thing that's been said to Mary at this point is you're blessed, you're highly favored. You go, girl. This child is going to cause the rising and falling of many in Israel. Oh, and Mary, I know this childbirth thing happened. You're going to be pierced too. Thanks. Take the baby back now. I don't know if you've ever just paid attention to that or noticed that. It's a strange moment, right? The mutual vulnerability of an older guy to pronounce this word of blessing and to pronounce it as blessing, and for Mary and Joseph to receive it as that. Because practically we know it comes true, right? The way, Mary's pathway doesn't get easier. Jesus is precocious to her. There's funny little bits in the scriptures about that. She doesn't get a seat in the palace that Jesus ultimately goes and kicks down Herod's door to get. She watches this son who heals the sick, makes people walk, fulfills their longings. She watches this crowd of people turn on him, resent him, accuse him of blasphemy, and kill him. She's pierced because she has to watch him get pierced. Solomon has been waiting, or Simeon has been waiting. She is going to wait at least 3 days, right? And parents, imagine this. The one that you were told was going to be, look at all of Mary's promises in Luke chapter 1, all the declarations she makes about what this child is going to be, and then have to hold that intention for 3 days as you watch your son be beaten, bloodied, killed by the very people he's trying to rescue and save and set free. Mary will know something about what it means to be pierced. And Simeon's weird, hard word in the Simba moment is a core piece of what it means to encounter the love of God, that it arrives in vulnerability. Because it's in these vulnerable moments that Mary will experience many years later, where a deeper, more profound understanding of what it is she's been a part of the whole time will make sense. One of my favorite Rob Reiner quotes comes from Cary Elwes in The Princess Bride, when he says to Princess Buttercup as the dread pirate Roberts, "Life is pain, Highness. Anyone that tells you differently is selling you something." That this intersection of love happens in the context of painful and hard moments. And so sometimes in the Christmas season, we think that encountering and walking in the love of God means that we are insulated from all of those things. But the incarnation moves closer to our vulnerabilities. To love will mean that you will be pierced, right? C.S. Lewis said it this way in The Four Loves. To love at all is to be vulnerable. Love anything and your heart will be wrung and possibly broken. If you want to make sure of keeping it intact, you must give it to no one, not even an animal, Wrap it carefully round with hobbies and little luxuries. Avoid all entanglements. Lock it up safe in the casket or coffin of your selfishness. But in that casket, safe, dark, motionless, airless, it will change. It will not be broken. It will become unbreakable, impenetrable, irredeemable. To love is to be vulnerable. And the thing that Mary ushers in is the very thing Simeon is encouraging her to participate in and come back to. That in these moments of piercing, in these moments of vulnerability, you will encounter the love of God in ways that you will not in smooth and good times. And to come back to that is a sense of Advent longing, right? That this thing that Simeon sees fulfillment in is happening through the context of those longings. So for you in the Advent season, right, what does it mean to not just get harder and meaner and crueler and more isolated, but to let the love of God make us more vulnerable as we pursue justice, as we pursue reconciliation with people who have hurt us before, or as we draw boundaries to try and give ourselves a timeout before we step back in. In all of those ways, right, how does the love of God and the vulnerability required to do that empower us and strengthen us? Simeon's saying to Mary, he's with you in that. And he's tasted that in his own life and his own story. So let's go back to Johnny Cash for a minute. I think the Johnny Cash, the Johnny Cash video, it contrasts from Simeon, right? Because it's not just this declaration of I can die happy. But the closing shot of that music video is Johnny Cash closing the lid of the piano. His daughter, after the shoot, when she saw the video, said to him, "Daddy, it looks like you're saying goodbye." And he said, "I am." His wife, June, would pass away 3 months later. Johnny himself would pass away 7 months later. But that song, as she and her brother said, it was his kind of declaration at the end of life to try and make right and communicate a message that it's never too late to live for the things that matter most. You can have all kinds of regrets and a few regrets. You can have all of those things, but it's not too late today to walk in the love that you've been shown by Jesus. It's not too late today, despite all the pain and all the heaviness of what's happened this month or what happened this week or what you're afraid of in the days ahead, to let the love of God meet us in the heavy and hard parts of a story. And what we celebrate in communion is that's what the incarnation is about. Love of God moving into our midst, make its dwelling among us, showing us the things that matter most and helping us to fight and contend for those things in our story. I was listening to an interview with Hayley Williams from Paramore. The interviewer asked her, "What's it like," right? Because you write a song in your studio or your room and you're by yourself. She's like, "Yeah, it's weird, right? You write some angsty song about heartbreak or betrayal where you're just getting it out. And then you could play it in front of 40,000 people. It's a weird feeling. But one of the things she has learned about vulnerability is that in communicating where she is and what she was processing when she wrote that thing, that 40,000 other people can relate to that in some way too. So when we move to the Lord's table, my encouragement for you is there probably is some unique way in which the waiting and the longing and the unfulfilled expectations or the difficulty to love well is meeting your story. Let the love of Jesus arrive in your midst, but also know that you are not alone in walking this out. Why we get up and we move about the room, even though it's a little bit clunky and a little bit weird, is because I think you and I need that reminder. So may you see from Simeon's song that Jesus is more than just a good guy or a good teacher that had some good things to say about the world. For Simeon, It was the fulfillment of a life well lived, to put his trust in that story. And that Advent waiting, that longing for love to arrive in our midst, what we trusted in communion is that love is meeting you today as you receive bread and cup. Because Jesus was pierced, but that's not the end of the story. And that's why it's good news. Would you pray with me? And then there's 4 stations in this room. They're all gluten-free stations. We invite you to receive bread and cup and think about that tangible picture of love that Mary was wrestling with, but is ultimately the issue and the essence of what it means to put our trust in this kingdom. God, we want to think about your love today. Simeon reflects on your love as this great fulfillment in his life, this promised thing. And some of us probably feel that today. And so those of us that feel that, God, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for that love. Thank you for that grace. Thank you for that gift. Lord, there are many of us, perhaps all of us in some way, trying to wrestle with how this picture of love, how we are pierced. And what Simeon clung to, what Mary clung to, is now a thing that we're trying to cling to. Lord, we partake of bread and cup because we're reminded that you know what it's like to be pierced, but that your kingdom is a conquering one. And in that, we have a song of great love. Help us to receive that today in the name of Jesus, in whose name we pray.